"Don't touch her!" the single dad roared in the park. But when his lightning-fast moves exposed a hidden FBI past, the whole town realized this quiet father was far more dangerous and far more hunted than anyone ever imagined. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The morning sun cast gentle shadows across Pine Grove Park as Daniel Whitaker settled onto his favorite bench. The familiar creak of wood beneath him matched the rhythmic squeak of the swing set where his daughter Lily played. He took a careful sip of his coffee, savoring the warmth that spread through his chest. "Watch this, Dad," Lily called out, pumping her legs harder on the swing. Her dark braids caught the sunlight as she soared higher. "I see you, sweetheart. Just be careful up there." Daniel's voice carried its usual calm, masking the instinctive flutter of concern in his stomach. He'd learned to handle these small moments of worry. They were nothing compared to his years in the FBI. The park buzzed with weekend activity. Young mothers pushed strollers along the walking path. Elderly couples fed breadcrumbs to eager ducks by the pond. And kids Lily's age scrambled across the playground equipment. It was exactly the kind of normal Saturday morning Daniel had dreamed about during his darkest days undercover. Lily's laughter mixed with the cheerful shouts of other children, creating a soundtrack that soothed Daniel's ever-present vigilance. He watched as she gracefully slowed her swing, dragging her feet in the wood chips below. Her face glowed with the simple joy of play, something he'd fought so hard to preserve for her after losing her mother. "Can I go on the monkey bars now?" Lily called out, already hopping off the swing. Daniel nodded, taking another sip of coffee. "Stay where I can see you." As Lily made her way across the playground, Daniel allowed himself a moment of reflection. 3 years had passed since he'd left the bureau, trading in his badge for a quiet life in this small town. The transition hadn't been easy. Some nights, he still woke up in a cold sweat, memories of infiltrating hate groups mixing with the grief of losing his wife Sarah. But mornings like this made it all worthwhile. The peace in Lily's eyes, the way she'd begun to flourish in school, the simple pleasure of being just another dad at the park. These were the rewards of his choice to leave that dangerous life behind. A group of kids gathered around the monkey bars, taking turns showing off their skills. Daniel smiled as Lily waited patiently for her turn, always the polite one. She'd inherited Sarah's gentle spirit, something that both warmed and ached in his heart. The morning breeze carried the scent of fresh-cut grass and nearby flowering dogwoods. Daniel relaxed his shoulders, letting the tension ease from his neck. Here, in this moment, they were safe. Normal. Just a father and daughter enjoying their weekend together. Lily had made it across the monkey bars twice when Daniel noticed movement at the edge of his vision. A little girl, maybe 4 or 5 years old, had broken away from her guardian near the park benches. She tottered toward the street, her pink dress fluttering as she chased after a butterfly. Daniel's body tensed instinctively, watching as the child got dangerously close to the curb. A car rolled past, driving a bit too fast for a park zone. His hand tightened around his coffee cup as he scanned for the girl's parents. The scene unfolded in slow motion. The little girl reached the sidewalk's edge, still focused on the butterfly. A woman, who'd been digging through her purse on a nearby bench, suddenly looked up and gasped. She lunged forward, arm outstretched. The woman's hand caught the little girl's arm in a rough grab, yanking her backward. The child let out a startled cry that pierced the peaceful morning air. In that split second, Daniel's carefully constructed civilian facade cracked. His FBI training kicked in like a switch being flipped. The coffee cup dropped from his hand, forgotten, as he surged to his feet. His muscles coiled with the precise tension he'd developed through years of tactical response training. "Don't touch her!" The command exploded from his chest, carrying the full authority of his former role. His voice cut through the park noise like a knife, causing several heads to turn sharply in his direction. Daniel covered the distance between his bench and the sidewalk in 4 long strides, his movements controlled but radiating power. His right hand automatically reached for a weapon that was no longer at his hip, a telltale gesture that wouldn't go unnoticed by observant onlookers. The silence that followed his shout seemed to stretch for an eternity. Parents stopped mid-conversation, children paused in their play, and even the birds seemed to quiet their morning songs. In that frozen moment, Daniel realized how much of his carefully hidden past he'd just revealed. The eyes of every adult in the park were now fixed on him. Some showed surprise, others confusion, and a few reflected a sharp, questioning awareness. In those stares, Daniel could see his quiet life in the community beginning to unravel. He'd moved like a trained agent, not a small-town father. He'd commanded attention like someone used to being obeyed in life-or-death situations. From the monkey bars, Lily had stopped mid-climb, her eyes wide as she watched her father transform into someone she'd never seen before. The look on her face, a mixture of awe and uncertainty, told Daniel that their peaceful Saturday morning had just become something else entirely. Daniel's feet hit the ground running, his body moving with the fluid precision of years of training he tried so hard to forget. The stranger had the little girl by her arm, yanking her backward with unnecessary force. Every instinct Daniel had honed through countless operations screamed danger. Let her go. Now. His voice carried the unmistakable authority of law enforcement, though he hadn't used that tone in years. The park had gone eerily quiet. The only sounds the creaking of empty swings and the confused whimpers of the struggling child. The stranger, a tall man in a navy windbreaker, jerked his head up, startled by Daniel's commanding presence. Daniel's stance shifted automatically, his feet shoulder-width apart, hands raised but ready. He'd positioned himself perfectly between the man and the nearest park exit, a detail that didn't go unnoticed by the growing crowd of onlookers. "Sir, step away from the child." Daniel's words were measured, calm, but firm. He could feel the eyes of other parents on him, could hear the quick shuffling of feet as they gathered their own children closer. "I don't think," the man started, but Daniel cut him off with a swift step forward. That wasn't a suggestion. The steel in Daniel's voice made several observers gasp. He didn't look like the quiet, reserved, single father they were used to seeing at PTA meetings and church gatherings. This was someone else entirely, someone dangerous. The little girl continued struggling, tears streaming down her face. Daniel's training kicked in full force. In 3 precise movements, he closed the distance between them, his hand shooting out to break the stranger's grip, using a technique that would cause minimal harm but maximum effectiveness. "Oh my God!" A woman's voice cut through the tension. "That's my niece! Stop!" Daniel froze, his hand still gripping the man's wrist. A woman in running shoes and yoga pants sprinted toward them, her face flushed with panic. "She ran away from me," the woman gasped, doubling over to catch her breath. "I was trying to stop her from running into the street. Charlie, honey, you can't do that. You scared me to death." The little girl, Charlie, stopped struggling immediately. "Aunt Jenny, I'm sorry. I saw a butterfly and—" Daniel released his hold instantly, taking a measured step back. The man in the windbreaker turned out to be Jenny's husband, who had rushed from the other direction to catch their niece. The tension in the air deflated like a balloon, replaced by nervous laughter and relieved sighs. "I'm so sorry," Daniel said, his voice returning to its usual gentle tone. I apologize for jumping to conclusions." Jenny shook her head, hugging Charlie close. "No, thank you, really. We shouldn't have grabbed her so roughly. We just panicked when we saw her heading for the street." But the damage was done. Daniel could hear the whispers rippling through the crowd. They weren't talking about the near accident anymore. They were talking about him. "Did you see how he moved? That was like something out of an action movie. Who is he really? Those were military moves, had to be. Never seen anything like it." "Daddy!" Lily's voice cut through the murmurs as she pushed through the crowd. She threw herself into his arms, and Daniel held her close, trying to steady his racing heart. "That was amazing! You were like a superhero!" Daniel managed a weak smile, but he could feel the stares boring into his back. His carefully constructed, quiet life felt like it was developing hairline cracks. "You must have some kind of training," Jenny's husband said, rubbing his wrist where Daniel had gripped it. There was no anger in his voice, only curiosity and a hint of admiration. I've taken some self-defense classes," Daniel deflected, but he could tell from the skeptical looks that no one was buying it. Regular self-defense classes didn't teach the kind of precise, professional moves he'd just displayed. Lily was practically bouncing with excitement, her earlier confusion replaced with pure pride. "My dad's the bravest. He always knows what to do." More parents were gathering, some with phones in their hands. Daniel recognized the look of people trying to place his face, probably already planning to Google his name when they got home. The peaceful anonymity he'd built in this small town was slipping away by the second. "Really, it was nothing," Daniel tried again, but his words were drowned out by the continued murmurs and Lily's enthusiastic retelling to anyone who would listen. Charlie, now calm in her aunt's arms, looked at Daniel with wide eyes. "Thank you for trying to help me, mister, even if I wasn't really in trouble." "You're welcome, sweetheart." Daniel managed a warm smile, though his insides were churning. He could feel his carefully constructed walls beginning to crumble under the weight of all the attention. Parents were clustering in small groups now, shooting glances his way and speaking in low voices. Some looked impressed, others concerned. A few had their phones out, either taking pictures or already searching for information about him online. Lily clung to his side, one arm wrapped around his waist. "Dad?" she whispered, picking up on his tension. "Are you okay?" Daniel pulled her closer, trying to project a calmness he didn't feel. "I'm fine, sweetheart." But he could feel the change in the air, the shift in how people were looking at him. His morning, as just another dad at the park, had transformed into something else entirely. The whispers continued to circulate through the crowd. That kind of training has to be law enforcement or military. Did anyone know? He's always been so quiet. Wonder what else he's hiding. The evening sun cast long shadows through the kitchen window as Daniel stirred the pot of marinara sauce. The familiar scent of garlic and herbs filled their small but cozy home. Behind him, Lily sat at the wooden kitchen table, her homework pushed aside as she recounted the day's events for what felt like the 100th time. "And then you just zoomed across the park, Dad, like whoosh!" Lily's hands flew through the air, mimicking his movement. "Everyone was watching you, and you were so brave." Daniel kept his eyes on the bubbling sauce, adding a pinch more oregano. "It wasn't that dramatic, sweetheart. I was just being careful, that's all." "But you look just like a superhero." Lily's chair scraped against the floor as she jumped up. "Like in those movies where the good guy saves everyone." Daniel turned to face his daughter, noting how her blue eyes sparkled with excitement, the same eyes as her mother's. He reached out to ruffle her sandy blonde hair. "Hey, how about you help me with these meatballs instead of telling stories?" "They're not stories, Dad. It's what happened." But she eagerly washed her hands and joined him at the counter. Daniel lifted her onto a step stool so she could reach better. As they rolled the seasoned meat between their palms, Daniel tried to redirect the conversation. "How's that science project coming along?" "Dad," Lily said, her voice taking on that serious tone that always made her sound older than her 9 years. "How did you know what to do? At the park, I mean. Most dads just yell or run normal, but you move different." Daniel's hands stilled for a moment. He'd known this question would come. Lily was too observant not to notice. "Well, remember how I told you I used to work for the government before you were born?" "Uh-huh. In an office, right?" "Something like that." Daniel placed a perfectly round meatball on the baking sheet. "Part of my job was learning how to help people who might be in trouble." Lily's small fingers pressed indents into her meatball. "Like a police officer?" "Similar to that, yes." Daniel kept his voice steady, casual. "But that was a long time ago. Now I just help people with their computers, remember?" "I think it's cool," Lily declared, reaching for more meat. "Sarah Martinez's dad works in a bank. He just looks at numbers all day." "But my dad's a hero." Daniel winced at the word. "Lily, honey, about today, can we have garlic bread too?" Lily interrupted, already moving to the refrigerator. "Heroes need extra garlic bread." Daniel watched her bounce across the kitchen, her ponytail swinging. She looked so happy, so proud. He couldn't bring himself to dampen her excitement with warnings about keeping quiet or explanations about his past. Not tonight. "Extra garlic bread it is," he agreed, sliding the meatballs into the oven. They ate their spaghetti at the kitchen table, Lily chattering between bites about school and friends and her upcoming soccer game. Daniel listened, offering the right responses at the right moments, but his mind kept drifting back to the park, to the way muscle memory had taken over, the way his body had responded without thought, to the whispers he'd heard as he'd led Lily away. After dinner, they followed their usual routine. Lily showed him her homework. They watched an episode of her favorite cartoon, and then it was time for bed. As Daniel tucked her in, Lily grabbed his hand. "Dad?" "Yes, sweetheart, I'm glad you helped that little girl today, even if it was just her aunt." Lily's voice was soft, sleepy. "Mom would be proud of you." Daniel's throat tightened. He leaned down and kissed her forehead, breathing in the sweet smell of her strawberry shampoo. "Good night, Lily Bug. I love you." "Love you too, Dad." He left her door cracked open, just the way she liked it, and went downstairs to clean up the kitchen. The quiet felt heavy now, filled with thoughts he'd been pushing away all evening. He loaded the dishwasher, wiped down the counters, anything to keep his hands busy. Finally, he sat at the kitchen table with his laptop, intending to catch up on some work emails. Instead, he found himself staring at the family photo that served as his screen background: him, Sarah, and a toddling Lily at the beach. It was taken just months before the accident that took Sarah away. "I'm trying my best," he whispered to Sarah's smiling face. "I just hope keeping secrets doesn't come back to hurt her." That night, Daniel slept fitfully, his dreams full of running feet and reaching hands. When his alarm went off at 6, he felt as if he'd barely closed his eyes. He made coffee first, strong and black, then went out to get the morning paper like he did every day. The headline hit him like a physical blow: "Single Dad Saves Child in Park Drama." There it was, in bold, black letters, complete with a photo someone must have snapped with their phone. The image showed him in mid-motion, his stance clearly that of someone with professional training. The article was prominently displayed on the front page of the local section. Impossible to miss. Daniel's hands tightened on the paper, crinkling the edges. The coffee he'd just drunk turned sour in his stomach as his eyes scanned the text. Words jumped out at him. Swift response. Professional defensive maneuvers. Former government employee. The sound of Lily's alarm drifting down from upstairs snapped him back to the present. He quickly folded the paper and shoved it under some junk mail on the counter. She couldn't see this. Not yet. He needed time to think, to plan how to handle the questions that were sure to come. Daniel pushed his shopping cart down the produce aisle, checking his grocery list while Lily skipped alongside him, dropping apples into a plastic bag. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead in the familiar small-town grocery store, where shelves were stocked with basic necessities and the occasional local specialty. "Mr. Whitaker," a plump woman in her 60s waved from near the tomatoes. Mrs. Peterson, who lived 3 houses down, hurried over. "I heard all about what happened at the park. Such quick thinking." Daniel gave a polite smile, the kind that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Just trying to help, Mrs. Peterson." "Daddy was so brave," Lily chimed in, beaming up at the neighbor. "He moved super fast, like a superhero." More shoppers began gathering around them. Mr. Jenkins from the hardware store patted Daniel's shoulder. "Good man. We need more folks looking out for our kids these days." "My dad's the best," Lily declared, wrapping her arms around Daniel's waist. The attention made Daniel's neck prickle. He'd spent years learning to blend in, to be just another quiet single father in a small town. Now people were looking at him differently, studying his movements, his posture, the way he carried himself. "Excuse me, Mr. Whitaker?" A new voice cut through the small crowd. A man in his 30s wearing pressed khakis and a polo shirt stepped forward, extending his hand. "Carl Simmons, from the Pine Grove Gazette. Got a minute?" Daniel shook the reporter's hand firmly but briefly. "Actually, we're just trying to get our shopping done. It'll only take a moment," Carl pressed, pulling out a small notebook. His smile was friendly, but his eyes were sharp. "That was quite a display of skill yesterday. Military background?" "Nothing special," Daniel replied, guiding Lily toward the cereal aisle. "Anyone would have done the same." Carl followed, his shoes clicking on the linoleum floor. "Interesting technique, though. Those weren't average moves. Almost looked like law enforcement training." Daniel's hand tightened on the shopping cart handle. "Mr. Simmons." "Call me Carl, please." The reporter's pen hovered over his notebook. "Have you lived here long? What brought you to Pine Grove?" "Daddy, can we get the chocolate cereal?" Lily tugged at Daniel's sleeve, providing a welcome distraction. "Not today, sweetheart. Let's stick to the list." Daniel turned to Carl. "Listen, I appreciate your interest, but we're just regular folks trying to do our shopping." Of course. Carl's smile widened. "But our readers love human interest stories. A single dad with mysterious skills saving a child. It's compelling stuff. Where did you work before moving here?" A cold feeling settled in Daniel's stomach. The reporter's questions were too pointed, too specific. "I've worked various jobs. Nothing newsworthy." "Come on, Mr. Whitaker. Those moves yesterday? That was professional training. Our readers deserve their privacy," Daniel cut in, his voice firm but quiet, especially when children are involved. Carl's friendly demeanor slipped for just a moment, revealing something harder underneath. Information has a way of coming out, Mr. Whitaker. Wouldn't you rather control the narrative, Daddy? Lily's voice had gone small. She pressed closer to Daniel's side, sensing the tension. Daniel placed a protective hand on her shoulder. We're done here, Mr. Simmons. Have a good day. He steered their cart toward the checkout, leaving the reporter standing in the cereal aisle. As they waited in line, Daniel could feel Carl's eyes on them from across the store. The weight of that gaze felt like a warning. The drive home was quiet, with Lily humming softly to the radio while Daniel's mind raced. He helped her put away the groceries, made dinner, and tried to maintain their normal routine. But Carl's questions echoed in his head, along with all the reasons he'd chosen this quiet town, this simple life. That evening, Daniel went through their familiar bedtime ritual. He listened to Lily, read a chapter from her book, tucked her worn stuffed rabbit beside her, and pulled her purple comforter up to her chin. Daddy? Lily's voice was drowsy. Are you worried about something? Daniel smoothed her hair back from her forehead. No, sweetheart. Everything's fine. Promise? Promise. He kissed her forehead. Sweet dreams, Lily, bug. He had just finished loading the dishwasher when his phone buzzed. The number was blocked, but Daniel knew immediately who it was. Only a handful of people had this number, and fewer would call this late. Whitaker, he answered softly, moving away from Lily's room. Daniel. Agent Morales' familiar voice was tense. Your name's resurfacing. Be careful. Daniel's heart seemed to skip a beat, but his voice remained steady. How bad? Bad enough for me to make this call. Watch yourself. The line went dead, leaving Daniel standing in his dark kitchen, the quiet of the house suddenly feeling less like peace and more like the calm before a storm. Monday morning brought a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. Daniel guided his old blue Honda through the familiar streets toward Lily's elementary school, stealing glances at his daughter in the rearview mirror. She sat in the back seat, humming while braiding her favorite doll's hair, completely unaware of the knot growing in her father's stomach. As they pulled into the drop-off lane, Daniel noticed more parents than usual, turning to look at their car. The whispers started immediately. He recognized Mrs. Peterson, who usually waved cheerfully every morning, now gripping her son Tommy's hand a little tighter as they passed. Ready for another great day, sweetheart? Daniel forced a smile as he helped Lily with her backpack. Yep. Lily bounced on her toes, her ponytail swinging. Jenny wants to hear all about how you saved that little girl. She says you're like a superhero. Daniel's chest tightened. Remember what we talked about? It was just a misunderstanding with the girl's aunt. Nothing heroic about it. Mrs. Matthews, Lily's teacher, approached them with a warm smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Mr. Whitaker, I wanted to thank you personally for your quick thinking at the park. It's comforting knowing we have such capable parents in our community. The pause before capable wasn't lost on Daniel. He'd heard that tone before, back in his FBI days, when people weren't sure if they should be grateful or afraid. Just doing what anyone would do, Daniel replied quietly, watching Lily skip toward the school entrance. A group of mothers huddled near the bike rack suddenly fell silent as he walked past. One of them, Sarah Collins, whose daughter shared art class with Lily, pulled her child closer to her side. The girl's eyes went wide, like Daniel was some kind of monster from a storybook. Back in his car, Daniel's phone buzzed. A text from Agent Morales. Local reporter digging. Might want to check your email. Daniel's hands gripped the steering wheel harder. The peaceful life he'd built here, the morning walks to the park, weekend pizza nights with Lily, the simple joy of being just another dad in a small town, felt like sand slipping through his fingers. The workday at his home office dragged by in a blur of insurance claims and worried glances at his phone. Every email notification made his heart jump, but none contained what he feared most. Until 3:15 p.m., 15 minutes before school pickup. The headline from the local news website glared at him. Town hero revealed. Former FBI agents dark past fighting hate groups. Daniel scanned the article, his throat going dry. Carl Simmons, the reporter from the grocery store, had done his homework. Details about Daniel's undercover work infiltrating violent extremist groups spread across the screen. Photos from old case files. Quotes from his testimony at trials. Everything he'd tried to leave behind was now public knowledge. The school parking lot was unusually crowded when Daniel arrived. Parents clustered in small groups, phones in hand, sharing the article. Some looked away when they saw him, others stared openly, their expressions a mix of fear and fascination. Lily emerged from the building with her head down, clutching her backpack straps. Daniel's heart sank. She'd always bounded out of school, eager to tell him about her day. "Hey, sweetie," he called softly as she climbed into the car. "Everything okay?" Lily didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was small. "Tommy said you hurt people, bad people, but still, he said you're dangerous." Daniel's fingers trembled as he started the car. "Lily, And Jenny's mom told her not to sit with me at lunch." Lily's bottom lip quivered. "She said you used to spy on people and put them in jail." They drove home in heavy silence. Daniel watched his daughter in the rearview mirror, wondering how to explain things to a 9-year-old that he could barely explain to himself. How do you tell a child that sometimes good people have to do hard things to protect others? That the world isn't as simple as the fairy tales where heroes are always celebrated? As they walked up their driveway, Mrs. Henderson from next door quickly ushered her grandchildren inside. The sound of their door locking echoed in the quiet street. Inside, Lily dropped her backpack by the stairs, something she never did, and turned to face her father. Her eyes were red-rimmed but determined. "Dad, are you a bad person?" Daniel knelt down to her level, his heart breaking. "No, sweetheart. Everything I did was to protect people, to make the world safer for kids like you. But why did you have to be secret about it? Why didn't you tell me?" Before Daniel could answer, his phone buzzed again. Another text from Morales. "Articles going viral in local groups. Call me." Lily watched him check the message, her face crumpling. "The kids at school said you lied about who you are. They said we can't trust you." Her voice caught on a sob. "They said you're dangerous." Daniel reached for his daughter, but she backed away, running up the stairs to her room. The sound of her door closing felt like a physical blow. He stood alone in the entryway, surrounded by the photos he'd carefully arranged on the walls. Lily's first day of school, their camping trips, moments of ordinary joy he'd fought so hard to preserve. Now, each image seemed to mock him, reminders of a peace that had been too good to last. His phone kept buzzing with notifications as the articles spread through town social media groups. Each ping felt like another nail in the coffin of their quiet life. Through the window, he watched a neighbor hurry past their house, eyes deliberately averted. The truth was out now, and there was no taking it back. The careful walls he'd built between his past and present had crumbled, leaving his daughter exposed to the harsh realities he'd tried to protect her from. In trying to keep her safe, had he only made things worse? The morning sun streamed through the stained glass windows of First Community Church, casting colorful shadows across the worn wooden pews. Daniel sat in his usual spot, 5 rows from the back, with Lily beside him in her favorite yellow dress. She swung her feet, humming softly as she colored in the children's bulletin. "Good morning, Daniel." Pastor Mike's warm voice carried across the sanctuary. The elderly minister made his way down the aisle, extending his hand. His genuine smile eased some of the tension in Daniel's shoulders. "Morning, Pastor," Daniel replied, standing to shake his hand. "Beautiful day for worship. And how's our little artist?" Pastor Mike bent down to Lily's level, admiring her coloring. "I'm drawing Jesus with the children," Lily explained, beaming. "See? I made his robe purple." As more congregants filtered in, Daniel noticed the shift in atmosphere. Mrs. Thompson, who usually sat right behind them, chose a pew across the aisle. The Wheeler family, whose son played with Lily after services, settled themselves near the front, far from their regular spot nearby. "Daddy, why is everyone looking at us funny?" Lily whispered, her crayon pausing mid-stroke. Daniel squeezed her shoulder gently. "Sometimes people just need time to understand things, sweetheart." The organ music started, and the congregation rose for the opening hymn. Daniel could hear Tom Garcia's strong baritone from 2 rows ahead, the same Tom who'd coached Lily's soccer team last spring. Now Tom kept his eyes fixed straight ahead, as if afraid to meet Daniel's gaze. During the greeting time, several church members approached with warm handshakes. "Thank you for your service," whispered elderly Mr. Jenkins, a Korean War veteran. "This country needs more men like you." But others merely nodded from a distance, or busied themselves with hymn books. Daniel caught fragments of whispered conversations, undercover work, dangerous people. "In our church, The sermon was about grace and acceptance, though Daniel wondered if Pastor Mike had chosen the topic specifically for today. He found it hard to focus, distracted by the occasional glances thrown his way. Lily nestled closer to his side, perhaps sensing his discomfort. After the service, during coffee hour in the fellowship hall, Daniel noticed how the usual casual mingling had taken on a different pattern. Some people made a point of coming to chat, like Sarah Martinez, whose brother served in the Marines. "Don't let them get to you," Sarah said quietly, touching his arm. "Some folks just don't understand sacrifice." But others created a subtle buffer zone around them. When Daniel and Lily approached the cookie table, a small group of mothers suddenly needed refills on their coffee. Their children, usually eager to play with Lily, stayed close to their parents. "Can we go home, Daddy?" Lily asked, her small voice trembling slightly. She'd only eaten half her cookie, a sure sign something was wrong. "My tummy feels funny." Daniel nodded, gathering their things. As they headed for the door, he heard Rita Spencer, the church secretary, speaking in what she probably thought was a hushed voice. "I just don't know if it's safe, having someone with his background around the children." The drive home was quiet. Lily stared out the window, her usual post-church chatter absent. Daniel's hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than necessary, his knuckles white with tension. At home, the afternoon stretched long and heavy. Daniel tried to keep things normal. They had lunch, worked on Lily's science project, and watched her favorite cartoon. But the weight of the morning hung over them like a storm cloud. "Time for bed, sweetheart," Daniel said when evening came. Lily didn't protest, unusual for a Sunday night. As he tucked her in, she asked, "Daddy, did you do something bad? Is that why people are scared of you?" Daniel's heart clenched. He sat on the edge of her bed, choosing his words carefully. "No, honey. I did something good. I helped stop people who were hurting others. But sometimes doing good things can be complicated, and people don't always understand. Like when Jesus helped people and some people got mad at him." Daniel smiled softly, stroking her hair. "Something like that. The important thing is to keep doing what's right, even when it's hard." "I'm not scared of you, Daddy," Lily said, wrapping her arms around his neck. "You're my hero." After Lily fell asleep, Daniel slipped out to the front porch. The night air was cool and clear, stars scattered across the dark sky like diamonds on velvet. He settled into the old wooden rocker, the same one where he'd spent countless nights after Sarah died, trying to make sense of life as a widowed father. The street was quiet except for the distant bark of the Petersons' dog. Crickets chirped in the garden Lily had helped him plant last spring. Everything looked so normal, so peaceful. The same view he'd grown to love over the past 3 years. Yet now, it all felt different, tainted by the weight of revealed secrets. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through the article that had changed everything. The words jumped out at him. "Former FBI agent, dangerous undercover operations. White supremacist organizations." Each phrase represented years of his life, missions he'd undertaken believing he was making the world safer for people like Lily. A car drove past slowly, probably Bill Hansen from down the street, checking his property again. Bill used to wave. Now he just drove by, watching. Daniel leaned back in the rocker, its familiar creak a comfort in the darkness. Had he been wrong to try to bury his past? He'd wanted to protect Lily, to give her a normal life away from the shadows of his former work. But secrets had a way of surfacing, and now his attempt at protection felt more like deception. The stars above seemed to hold no answers. They just twinkled silently, as they had on countless nights when he'd made hard decisions in service to his country. Decisions that had kept people safe, even if they'd never know the cost. The porch light cast a gentle glow on Lily's bicycle, propped against the railing with its sparkly streamers and pink basket. Such an ordinary, innocent thing, a symbol of the simple life he'd tried to build here. Now he wondered if that life had been built on shifting sand. The schoolyard buzzed with activity as parents dropped off their children for another day of learning. Daniel stood beside his car, watching Lily make her way up the steps of Morton Elementary. His daughter's backpack bounced with each step, its rainbow keychain catching the morning light. A group of mothers huddled near the entrance, their whispers and sideways glances making it clear they were discussing him. Daniel had gotten used to this treatment over the past few days, but it still stung. He shifted his weight, considering whether to leave early to avoid another awkward encounter. "Mr. Whitaker?" A warm voice caught his attention. Daniel turned to find a woman approaching him. She wore a neat blazer over dark jeans, and her natural hair was pulled back in a stylish twist. Her expression was open and direct, unlike the guarded looks he'd been receiving lately. "I'm Angela Roberts," she said, extending her hand. "Jamal's mom. I've been wanting to talk to you." Daniel shook her hand, noting her firm grip. "Nice to meet you, Mrs. Roberts." "It's Miss," she corrected with a gentle smile. "And please, call me Angela." She gestured to a boy about Lily's age who was heading into the school. "That's my son Jamal. He's in your daughter's class." Daniel nodded, recognizing the quiet boy who sometimes played with Lily during recess. "Right, Lily's mentioned him. She says he's good at math." Angela's eyes crinkled with pride, but then her expression grew more serious. "I wanted to thank you, Mr. Whitaker, for what you did in the FBI, fighting those hate groups. It means more than you know." Daniel tensed slightly, not used to anyone bringing up his past so directly. "I was just doing my job." "No," Angela said firmly. "It was more than that. Last year, Jamal found racist notes in his desk. Some parents tried to brush it off as kids being kids, but that kind of hate doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from the same darkness you fought against." A heavy silence fell between them. Daniel watched as more children filtered into the school, thinking about how many of them might be carrying burdens no child should bear. "I'm sorry that happened to Jamal," he said finally. "Is he okay now?" Angela's shoulders relaxed slightly. "He's stronger than anyone knows. But it's not easy being different in a small town. Sometimes I wonder if I did the right thing, moving here after his father passed." A bell rang in the distance, and the remaining students hurried inside. The playground emptied quickly, leaving Daniel and Angela standing in the morning quiet. "Would you like to grab a coffee?" Angela asked suddenly. "I have an hour before I need to be at work. And honestly, it's nice talking to someone who understands." Daniel hesitated, aware of the mothers still watching from their cars, but something in Angela's straightforward manner made him nod. "There's a diner around the corner. They make decent coffee." 10 minutes later, they sat in a worn booth at May's Diner, steam rising from their mugs. The morning sun streamed through the windows, casting long shadows across the checkered floor. A waitress whom Daniel recognized but couldn't name brought them menus, her smile a bit too curious. "The whole town's talking about you," Angela said once they were alone. She stirred cream into her coffee with careful movements. "But they're missing the point. They're so focused on being afraid of your past that they can't see what it means to have someone like you here, someone who stood up against real danger." Daniel wrapped his hands around his mug, feeling its warmth. "I didn't want any of this attention. I came here to give Lily a normal life, away from all that." "I understand that," Angela said softly. "When I first moved here with Jamal, all I wanted was to blend in, to not make waves. But sometimes life has other plans." She paused, taking a sip of coffee before continuing. "You know what the hardest part is? Teaching your child to be proud of who they are, while also trying to protect them from people who might hate them for it. Jamal asks me sometimes why some people don't like us, and I never know quite what to say." Daniel thought of Lily's tears yesterday after school, when she'd asked why her classmates were suddenly scared of her daddy. His throat tightened. "It's not fair to them," he said. "They shouldn't have to deal with adult prejudices." Angela nodded, her eyes meeting his with unexpected warmth. "No, they shouldn't. But they're watching us, learning how to face these challenges." When Jamal saw me speak up at that school board meeting about diversity in the curriculum, he learned something about standing tall, just like your Lily is learning from you now. Something stirred in Daniel's chest, a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. Angela's words resonated with a truth he'd been trying to ignore. Her presence felt both comforting and dangerous, like standing too close to a fire on a cold night. He found himself wanting to lean into that warmth, to share more about his own struggles. But then he thought of Lily, already dealing with so much change and confusion. Getting involved with anyone, especially someone who understood him so well, would only complicate things further. Daniel sat back slightly, breaking the moment of connection. "I should probably head to work," he said, even though they both knew it was too early. Angela's eyes showed understanding, maybe even a hint of the same reluctance he felt. "Of course," she said, reaching for her purse. "Thank you for the coffee." Please, let me, Daniel insisted, pulling out his wallet. Their fingers brushed as they both reached for the check, and Daniel pulled back as if touched by electricity. A knowing look passed between them before they both looked away. The town hall's wooden benches creaked under the weight of concerned citizens filing in for the evening council meeting. Daniel sat in the back row with Lily nestled against him, her small hand gripping his larger one. The familiar scent of lemon polish and old wood filled the air. But tonight, it couldn't mask the tension crackling through the room. Mayor Thompson, a silver-haired woman with wire-rimmed glasses, tapped her gavel. I call this meeting to order. Our first item of business is the proposal to honor Daniel Whitaker with a Community Service Award for his actions at Morton Park last weekend. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Daniel noticed several veterans from his church nodding in approval, while others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. He wished he could shield Lily from what was coming, but she had insisted on being here. I move to approve the award, said Councilmember Jenkins, a retired schoolteacher who had always been kind to Lily. Mr. Whitaker showed remarkable courage in protecting a child. That's exactly the kind of citizenship we should celebrate. Second, called out another voice. But before the mayor could respond, Howard Mitchell stood up. Daniel recognized him as one of the more vocal critics at recent PTA meetings. Now, hold on just a minute, Mitchell said, his face flushed. Are we really going to give an award to someone who's been lying to us all this time? Mr. Mitchell, Mayor Thompson warned. Please wait to be recognized before speaking. Mitchell ignored her. This man moved into our community under false pretenses. He was an FBI agent who infiltrated organizations. How do we know he's not still working undercover? How can we trust anything about him? Lily pressed closer to Daniel's side. He wrapped his arm around her shoulders, wishing he could protect her from every harsh word. The point is, Councilmember Sandra Reed interjected. Mr. Whitaker acted to protect a child. His past service to our country should be commended, not condemned. His past service? A harsh laugh came from the middle of the room. You mean spying on American citizens? Breaking up perfectly legal organizations? Legal? Angela Martinez stood up from her seat 3 rows ahead of Daniel. Her voice rang with controlled anger. The groups, mister, Whitaker helped investigate, were promoting violence against minorities. As someone who's experienced that hatred firsthand, I'm grateful for his work. The room erupted into competing voices. Mayor Thompson banged her gavel repeatedly. Order. We will maintain order. An elderly man with a veteran's cap pushed himself to his feet. I served this country for 20 years, he said, his voice cutting through the chaos. What matters isn't where someone came from, but what they do when called upon. Mr. Whitaker proved himself when that child needed help. Oh, that's rich, sneered a woman in a floral dress. So we're supposed to just forget that he deceived everyone? That he might have files on all of us? My Henry says he's seen strange cars driving by our house ever since this all came out. Daniel felt his jaw tighten. The accusation was absurd, but he knew from experience how fear could twist people's minds. Daddy, Lily whispered, her voice trembling. Why are they so mad? Before he could answer, Mitchell's voice boomed out again. I say we table this award nonsense and start asking the real questions, like why someone with his background chose our town in the first place. What's he really doing here? That's enough. Mayor Thompson's gavel crashed down. Mr. Mitchell, if you cannot follow proper procedure, you will be asked to leave. But the damage was done. The room had divided into clear factions, those who supported Daniel and those who viewed him with suspicion. The anger was palpable, hanging in the air like storm clouds. Councilmember Jenkins tried to restore calm. Perhaps we should hear from Mr. Whitaker himself. All eyes turned toward Daniel. He felt Lily trembling beside him and knew he had to speak, if only to show her that facing fear was better than running from it. He stood slowly, keeping one hand on Lily's shoulder. I came to this town for one reason: to give my daughter a peaceful life after losing her mother. Yes, I served in the FBI. Yes, I worked to stop groups that promoted violence. I'm not ashamed of that work, but it's not who I am anymore. I'm just a father trying to raise his little girl. Convenient story, Mitchell shot back. But how do we know you're not just afraid of having someone around who can spot your own prejudices? Angela interrupted, turning to face Mitchell directly. The room exploded again. Someone in the back shouted, Go back where you came from! though it wasn't clear if they meant Angela or Daniel. Mayor Thompson's face had turned red with effort as she pounded her gavel. "This meeting is suspended! Clear the room, now!" People began standing, some shouting, others shaking their heads in disgust. Daniel felt a tug on his sleeve and looked down to see tears streaming down Lily's face. "Let's go home, sweetheart," he said softly, gathering their things. As they made their way toward the exit, someone called out, "There goes the spy and his kid!" A few harsh laughs followed. Outside in the cooling evening air, Lily buried her face in Daniel's jacket. Her small shoulders shook with sobs. "Why don't they like us, Daddy?" Daniel knelt down on the sidewalk, pulling his daughter into a tight hug. The street lamps cast long shadows around them, and a gentle breeze stirred the leaves overhead. He closed his eyes, drawing deep from his well of faith, silently praying for the strength to help both of them through this storm. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows through the stained glass windows of the small church, painting rainbow patterns across the worn wooden pews. Daniel Whitaker stood at the entrance, his hand hesitating on the heavy oak door. Inside, Pastor Miller worked quietly, arranging hymnals with methodical care. "I thought I might find you here," Pastor Miller said without looking up, a gentle smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Come in, son." Daniel stepped inside, the familiar scent of old wood and candle wax washing over him. His footsteps echoed in the empty sanctuary. "I'm not sure why I came," he admitted. "Sometimes our feet know where we need to go before our heads do." Pastor Miller set down the hymnal and turned to face Daniel. His weathered face carried the same kindness it had shown at Daniel's wife's funeral 3 years ago. "Sit with me." They settled into the front pew, where Daniel had spent countless Sundays with Lily before the park incident changed everything. Pastor Miller waited patiently, letting the silence stretch between them like a bridge. "I don't know what to do anymore," Daniel finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Everything I've done to protect Lily, to give her a normal life." He ran a hand through his hair. "It's all falling apart." Pastor Miller nodded slowly. "You know, Daniel, I've been in this town for 30 years. I've seen good people face hard times. But I've also seen something remarkable happen when they stop trying to carry their burdens alone. The town council meeting tonight." Daniel's shoulders slumped. "Some of those people looked at me like I was a monster. Fear does strange things to people," Pastor Miller said. "But so does courage. And you, Daniel Whitaker, have shown more courage than most." "Courage?" Daniel let out a bitter laugh. "I've been hiding who I am, what I did." "You protected people who couldn't protect themselves?" Pastor Miller corrected gently. "You stood against hatred and violence. That's not something to hide. It's something to teach your daughter about." The mention of Lily made Daniel's heart ache. "She asked me why people don't like us anymore." Pastor Miller reached over and placed a firm hand on Daniel's shoulder. "Do you remember the story of Daniel in the lion's den?" "It was Lily's favorite Bible story when she was little," Daniel said softly. Before her mother died. Daniel faced those lions because he refused to hide his faith, even when it would have been easier to stay quiet. Sometimes, son, God puts us in positions where we have to choose between what's easy and what's right. The rainbow lights from the stained glass shifted as clouds moved across the sun outside. Daniel watched them dance across the altar. "I'm not sure I have that kind of faith anymore." "Faith isn't about being sure," Pastor Miller said. "It's about taking the next step even when you're not. And you're not alone in this, Daniel. There are people in this community who understand what you did, who support you." "Like Angela," Daniel said without thinking, then felt his face warm slightly. Pastor Miller's eyes twinkled. "Yes, like Angela. She's a strong woman who's faced her own battles with prejudice in this town. Sometimes God brings people into our lives right when we need them most." Daniel remembered the way Angela had looked at him over coffee, with understanding instead of judgment. "I'm afraid of bringing more trouble to her door, to anyone's door." "That's not your choice to make for others," Pastor Miller said firmly. "When we try to protect people by pushing them away, we deny them the chance to show God's love in action." The words hit Daniel like a physical force. How many times had he kept Lily at arm's length from his past? How often had he chosen silence over truth? "What do I do now?" he asked. "Start with honesty," Pastor Miller said. "With Lily, with yourself, with God. The truth may not always make things easier, but it makes them clearer. Daniel felt something shift inside him, like a rusty door creaking open. Lily used to love saying her prayers at night. After Sarah died, I couldn't bring myself to pray with her anymore. It's never too late to start again, Pastor Miller said softly. He reached for his Bible, weathered and well-loved, and opened it to a familiar passage. Remember what it says in Joshua, "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go." The words seemed to echo in the empty church, filling the space with something that felt like hope. Daniel closed his eyes, letting them sink in. "Thank you," he said finally, standing up. I think I know what I need to do now." Pastor Miller stood with him, pulling him into a warm embrace. "This community needs people like you, Daniel. People who stand up for what's right, who show others what courage looks like. Don't hide that light." The sun had set by the time Daniel made it home, finding Lily already in her pajamas, curled up with a book on her bed. She looked up as he entered, her face brightening. "Daddy, you're just in time for bedtime." Daniel sat on the edge of her bed, taking in her innocent face, seeing the strength that lay beneath. "Actually, sweetheart, I thought we might do something we haven't done in a while." Lily tilted her head curiously. "Would you like to say our prayers together tonight?" Her eyes widened with surprise and joy. "Like we used to? With Mommy?" Daniel nodded, his throat tight with emotion. Just like that, Lily scrambled to kneel beside her bed, folding her hands the way her mother had taught her years ago. Daniel knelt beside her, feeling both strange and completely right. "Dear God," he began softly, his voice growing stronger with each word. "Thank you for this day, for keeping us safe, for giving us friends like Pastor Miller and Angela who remind us we're not alone." He paused, feeling Lily's small hand slip into his. "Please give us courage to do what's right, even when it's hard. Help us remember that you're with us, just like you were with Daniel in the lion's den. And please, help the people who are scared of Daddy understand that he's a good person," Lily added in her clear child's voice. Amen. The morning sun warmed the familiar playground where everything had started months ago. Daniel stood at the edge of the park, watching families spread blankets across the grass for the town's annual summer picnic. His hands tightened around the handles of the grocery bags he carried, filled with the potato salad and cookies Lily had insisted on making. "Come on, Dad!" Lily tugged at his sleeve, practically bouncing with excitement. Her pink sundress fluttered in the breeze, matching the ribbons in her hair. "I see Jamal by the big oak tree." Daniel hesitated, scanning the crowd. Some people glanced his way, their expressions a mix of curiosity and lingering wariness, but his daughter's eager face made his doubts fade. "All right, sweetheart, lead the way." They weaved through the scattered groups, Lily skipping ahead while Daniel nodded politely to those they passed. Near the massive oak tree, Angela Roberts waved them over. She sat on a red and white checkered blanket, arranging containers of food while Jamal helped set out paper plates. "We saved you the best spot," Angela called out, her warm smile genuine. She wore a yellow summer dress that seemed to catch the sunlight, making her whole face glow. "Perfect shade, and close enough to watch the games later." "Thanks for thinking of us," Daniel said, setting down their bags. He helped Lily unpack their contributions while Jamal excitedly showed her his new remote-controlled car. "The potato salad smells amazing," Angela said, lifting the lid of Daniel's container. "Family recipe?" Daniel chuckled, relaxing slightly as he settled onto the blanket. "More like whatever was in the fridge recipe. But Lily insisted we couldn't come empty-handed." "She's right," Angela nodded, arranging the dishes. "Food brings people together. That's what my mama always said." The children's laughter drew Daniel's attention. Lily and Jamal had already attracted a small group of kids, taking turns with the remote-controlled car. Daniel noticed how some parents watched cautiously at first, but the sound of pure childhood joy seemed to ease their concern. "They make it look so easy, don't they?" Angela commented, following his gaze. "Kids, they just see other kids. No complications, no prejudices, just potential playmates." Daniel nodded, his throat tight with emotion. "Lily's been so brave through all this. Braver than me sometimes. Children often are." Angela passed him a plate of her homemade fried chicken. "But you've been brave too, Daniel. Staying here, facing everything head-on. That takes courage." Before Daniel could respond, Mrs. Thompson from the church choir approached their blanket, holding a dish of apple cobbler. Her silver hair caught the sunlight as she smiled hesitantly. "Room for one more?" she asked. "This is still warm from the oven." Daniel felt his chest lighten as Angela immediately scooted over. "Always room for cobbler," she said, patting the blanket. "Especially yours, Helen. I remember it from the last bake sale." More people gradually drifted toward their spot. Mr. Peterson, a veteran who'd defended Daniel at the town meeting, brought his famous grilled corn. Sarah from the library came with her twins, who quickly joined the growing group of children playing nearby. The conversation flowed easier than Daniel expected. They talked about simple things, garden tips, summer plans, funny stories about their kids. When Lily ran over to grab a cookie, her cheeks flushed with joy, Daniel saw several adults smile genuinely at her enthusiasm. "Dad," she called out, pulling at his hand, "we're starting a soccer game. You promised you'd play." Daniel glanced at Angela, who shooed him away with a grin. "Go on. Show these kids how it's done." The makeshift soccer field was marked by orange cones, with kids dividing into teams. Daniel found himself goalkeeper, with Lily and Jamal on his team. Parents gathered to watch, their previous tension melting away as they cheered for both sides. When Daniel made a dramatic save, diving to stop a shot from Sarah's son, the crowd erupted in good-natured applause. He caught sight of Pastor Miller on the sidelines, beaming proudly. The game ended in happy exhaustion, with no one quite sure of the final score. As they walked back to their blanket, Lily's hand in his, Daniel heard something he hadn't in months. Genuine laughter and friendly chatter directed his way. Back at their spot, the group had grown larger. Angela was sharing stories that had everyone chuckling, her natural warmth drawing people in. She caught Daniel's eye as he sat down, passing him a cold lemonade. "Having fun?" she asked softly. Daniel looked around at the scene before him. Lily sharing cookies with her friends, neighbors talking and laughing together, the afternoon sun painting everything in a golden glow. For the first time in months, he felt the knot in his chest truly loosen. "Yeah," he replied, a real smile spreading across his face. "I actually am." The picnic continued into the early evening, with more games, more food, and more moments of connection. The whispers that had once followed Daniel now turned into open conversations. Even those who had been most suspicious seemed to soften, watching him play with the children and share stories with their neighbors. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the park, Daniel sat back and watched Lily showing Jamal how to make daisy chains. The same park that had started all their troubles now felt different, like a place of healing instead of hurt. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the park as families began packing up their picnic baskets. Daniel helped Angela fold her checkered blanket, their fingers brushing accidentally. Lily and Jamal were still playing tag with other children near the swings, their laughter carrying across the cooling air. "They seem to have gotten closer," Angela said, watching their children. Her dark curls caught the golden light, and Daniel found himself noticing how her eyes crinkled when she smiled. "Lily talks about Jamal all the time now," Daniel admitted. "She says he's the only one who really understands what it's like to be different." Angela nodded, tucking the folded blanket into her tote bag. Would you like to walk with us? Our houses are in the same direction anyway." Daniel hesitated for just a moment before calling out to Lily. "Time to head home, sweetheart." The children joined them, breathless and red-cheeked from running. As they started walking along the tree-lined street, Lily and Jamal skipped ahead, deep in conversation about their favorite superhero movies. "It's nice seeing them like this," Angela said softly. "Before you came along, Jamal struggled to make friends. Kids can be cruel sometimes." Daniel's jaw tightened. "I've seen too much of that in my work. It's one of the reasons I left the FBI. The darkness started weighing too heavy." They walked in comfortable silence for a while, their footsteps crunching on fallen leaves. The setting sun painted the sky in shades of pink and orange, and a cool breeze carried the scent of late summer flowers. "Can I ask you something personal?" Angela's voice was gentle. When Daniel nodded, she continued, "How do you do it? Raise Lily alone and still keep going after everything you've been through?" Daniel took a deep breath, considering his words carefully. "Some days, I don't know how I manage. After Sarah, my wife, passed away, I felt like I was drowning. Lily was the only thing that kept me afloat." Angela's hand brushed against his arm in silent support. "I understand that feeling. When Jamal's father left us, it felt like the world had ended. But children, They have this way of forcing you to keep moving forward. They do, Daniel agreed, watching Lily skip ahead. Though sometimes I wonder if I'm doing right by her. All this upheaval lately. You're doing more than right, Angela interrupted firmly. You're teaching her to stand up for what's good and true, even when it's hard. That's a precious gift. They reached the corner where their paths would diverge. The children had stopped at the intersection, waiting for their parents to catch up. The streetlights were just beginning to flicker on, creating pools of warm light on the sidewalk. Sarah used to say something similar, Daniel said quietly, turning to face Angela. She believed that doing the right thing was worth any cost. Angela's eyes softened with understanding. She sounds like she was an amazing woman. She was. Daniel's voice caught slightly. But you know what's strange? This is the first time I've been able to talk about her without feeling like my chest would cave in. They had stopped walking now, standing close in the growing twilight. Angela's face was tilted up toward his, compassion written in every line of her features. That's not strange at all. It's healing. Daniel found himself drawn toward her, noticing the gentle curve of her cheek, the warmth in her brown eyes. The air between them seemed to grow thick with unspoken words and possibilities. He leaned in slightly, and Angela's breath caught. For a moment, the world narrowed to just the two of them, standing in the soft evening light. Daniel could feel his heart thundering in his chest, a sensation he hadn't experienced in years. "Dad, are we going home now?" Lily's voice broke the spell, and they stepped apart quickly. Angela cleared her throat, adjusting her bag strap. "We should probably." "Yeah," Daniel agreed, running a hand through his hair. "Thank you for understanding." "Always," Angela replied with a shy smile. "We'll see you at church on Sunday?" Daniel nodded, unable to stop the smile spreading across his face. "We'll be there." As he watched Angela and Jamal walk away, Daniel felt something shift inside him, like a door that had been locked for years was finally creaking open. The grief for Sarah would always be there, but maybe, just maybe, there was room in his heart for something new to grow. Lily slipped her small hand into his. "Dad, you're smiling funny." Daniel squeezed her hand, his heart feeling lighter than it had in years. "Am I? I guess I'm just happy, sweetheart. Really happy." They turned toward home, walking in the growing dusk. The weight of his past felt a little less heavy, and for the first time since Sarah's death, Daniel felt truly alive, not just surviving, but beginning to hope again. Daniel couldn't sleep. His mind kept drifting back to that almost kiss with Angela, the way her eyes had sparkled in the fading sunlight. He paced his living room, checking on Lily one more time before heading to the kitchen for some chamomile tea. Through the window, he noticed the mailbox flag was up. Strange, mail never came this late. His old FBI instincts tingled. Something wasn't right. Daniel slipped on his shoes and grabbed a flashlight. The cool night air raised goosebumps on his arms as he approached the mailbox. Inside was a single white envelope, no stamp or return address. His hands, steady from years of training, carefully opened it. The message inside made his blood run cold. "We haven't forgotten you, Agent Whitaker, and now we know where to find you." Daniel's mind raced through possibilities. The handwriting was unfamiliar, but the threat was clear. He scanned the quiet street, noting every shadow and movement. Nothing seemed out of place, but he knew better than to trust the calm. Back inside, he double-checked all the locks and windows. His phone felt heavy in his hand as he debated calling Agent Morales. It was late, but this wasn't something that could wait until morning. "Morales," his old colleague answered on the third ring, voice thick with sleep. "It's Whitaker. They found me." There was a rustling sound. Then Morales was fully alert. "Tell me everything." Daniel described the letter, his voice low to avoid waking Lily. "Could be nothing," he said. But, your gut says otherwise," Morales finished. "I'll run some checks, put out some feelers. Any unusual activity lately?" Daniel thought about the past few weeks, the article, the whispers, the town's divided reaction. "Nothing concrete, just the usual fallout from my cover being blown." "Keep your eyes open," Morales advised. "I'll have the local field office put some surveillance in place. And Daniel, don't try to handle this alone. Those days are over." After hanging up, Daniel sat in the darkness of his kitchen, the letter spread out before him. The threatening words seemed to mock him. He'd worked so hard to build a safe life for Lily, to leave the violence and danger behind. Now it was all unraveling. He barely slept that night, checking on Lily every hour. Her peaceful face in the moonlight reminded him of everything he had to protect. Morning came too quickly. Daniel made Lily's favorite breakfast, chocolate chip pancakes, trying to act normal while his nerves were on high alert. She chatted about school and her friends, oblivious to his tension. "Can we have another picnic with Angela and Jamal soon?" Lily asked, syrup dripping down her chin. Daniel's heart squeezed. Should he warn Angela? Keep his distance to protect her and Jamal? "We'll see, sweetie. Let's focus on getting you to school first." The drive to school felt different. Daniel noticed every car that passed them, every person on the sidewalk. He pulled up to the drop-off zone, but instead of letting Lily out, he parked and walked her to the entrance. "Dad," she protested, "I'm not a baby. I can walk by myself." "Humor your old man today," he said, forcing a smile. That's when he noticed them, two men he'd never seen before, standing near the playground. They were trying too hard to look casual, one pretending to read a newspaper while the other kept glancing at the arriving children. Daniel's hand tightened around Lily's. "Actually, sweetheart, let's go inside together." But Lily had already spotted something else. "Look, that man has a puppy." She pointed to a third stranger, middle-aged with graying hair, holding a small dog on a leash. The man smiled and waved. "Hey there, you must be Lily. I know your dad. We used to work together." Daniel's heart stopped. He'd never seen this man before in his life. Lily, always friendly, started to move toward the puppy. "Can I pet?" "No." Daniel pulled her back, perhaps too roughly. Other parents turned to stare. The man with the dog quickly walked away, disappearing around the corner of the school building. Lily's eyes filled with tears. "Dad, you're hurting my arm." Daniel immediately loosened his grip, sick with the realization of how close he'd come to losing her. "I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry." He knelt down and hugged her tight, his heart hammering against his ribs. Over her shoulder, he saw the two men by the playground slowly retreat, but their message was clear. They could get to Lily any time. Fear turned to icy panic in his veins. He needed to get Lily somewhere safe, needed to call Morales, needed to warn Angela. But first, he had to get his daughter away from here. "How about we skip school today?" he suggested, trying to keep his voice light. "We could have a daddy-daughter day instead." Lily's face brightened through her tears. "Really? But you never let me skip school." "Well, today is special." Daniel stood, keeping Lily close as they walked back to the car. He could feel eyes on them, watching their every move. His training screamed at him to run, to get Lily as far away as possible. But he forced himself to move calmly, to avoid scaring her more than he already had. As he buckled her into the car, Lily asked, "Who was that man with the puppy?" "Just someone who made a mistake," Daniel said, closing her door and scanning the street one more time. "He thought he knew me, but he didn't." But Daniel knew better. There had been no mistake. His past had finally caught up with him, and now it wasn't just his life at stake. It was Lily's too. As he drove away from the school, his mind raced with possibilities, each one darker than the last. The peaceful life he'd built was shattering, and he had no idea how to protect the people he loved from what was coming. The letter in his pocket seemed to burn against his chest, its warning now a terrifying reality. They knew exactly where to find him, and worse, they knew how to get to Lily. The morning sun barely peeked through Daniel's bedroom window as he pulled out his old FBI go bag from the closet. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, adding fresh clothes and essential supplies. The familiar motions brought back memories of midnight extractions and witness relocations, but this time felt different. This time, it wasn't just about him. Down the hall, Lily slept peacefully, unaware of the turmoil in her father's heart. Daniel paused at her doorway, watching her chest rise and fall. She decorated her walls with photos from their time in this town, her first day of school, birthday parties at the park, recent pictures with Jamal and Angela. The sight made his throat tight. In the kitchen, he started a pot of coffee and spread out a map on the counter. His finger traced possible routes to safe locations he'd memorized years ago. Maybe Vermont, quiet towns, good schools, or perhaps further west, where the mountains could hide them. His old bureau contacts could help set up new identities, give them a fresh start. The soft knock at the door made him freeze. His hand instinctively moved to his hip where his service weapon used to be. Through the peephole, he saw Angela standing on his porch, her expression worried but determined. Daniel opened the door cautiously. "Angela, it's early. Is everything okay?" She stepped inside, taking in the map on the counter and the half-pack bag by the stairs. Her eyes narrowed. "Pastor Miller called me. Said you left him a message about handling some church matters while you're away. You're running, aren't you?" "I'm protecting my daughter," Daniel said, his voice low to avoid waking Lily. "These people, they're dangerous. You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," Angela interrupted, crossing her arms. "I understand you're scared. But running isn't the answer." Daniel moved back to the kitchen, needing distance from the intensity in her eyes. "They found us, Angela. They threatened my little girl. I won't risk." "And what happens to the next family they target?" Angela followed him, her voice passionate but controlled. "What happens to this community when good people run instead of stand? I'm not responsible for—" "Yes, you are," she insisted. "We all are. That's what community means. That's what faith means." She placed her hand on his arm, and he felt the warmth of her touch through his sleeve. "You're not alone anymore, Daniel. We'll stand with you." Daniel pulled away, running his hands through his hair in frustration. "You don't know what these people are capable of. I've seen it firsthand. They destroy lives, Angela. And you stopped them before," she reminded him. "You faced them then. Why is now different?" "Because now I have Lily." His voice cracked. "I can't lose her. I can't lose anyone else I love." The word hung between them, unplanned but honest. Angela's expression softened. "Then teach her to be brave. Show her that love is stronger than hate. That community matters more than fear." Daniel leaned against the counter, feeling the weight of decision heavy on his shoulders. "It's not that simple. Nothing worth fighting for Ever Island." Angela moved closer, her voice gentle but firm. "Pastor Miller is already organizing a community meeting. The veterans group wants to help with security. Even Carl Simmons, that reporter who exposed your past, he's offering to use his platform to support you." "They don't understand the risk," Daniel protested, but his resolve was wavering. "Maybe they understand better than you think." Angela took his hand, her grip strong and steady. "Remember what you told me about why you joined the FBI? About wanting to make the world safer for people who couldn't protect themselves?" Daniel closed his eyes, remembering that conversation from weeks ago. They'd been walking home from the park, Lily and Jamal running ahead, when Angela had asked about his past. He'd surprised himself by answering honestly. "That was different," he said quietly. "Was it? Or are you just more afraid now because you have more to lose?" Angela squeezed his hand. "You're not that same undercover agent anymore, Daniel. You're stronger now because you're not fighting alone." The sound of small feet on the stairs made them both turn. Lily stood there in her pajamas, clutching her stuffed rabbit. "Daddy, are we going somewhere?" Daniel's heart clenched at the worry in her voice. He looked at the map on the counter, then at Angela's steady gaze, then back to his daughter. In Lily's eyes, he saw the same question he'd been wrestling with all night. Fight or flight? "I'm trying to figure that out, sweetheart," he answered honestly. Lily came down the stairs and wrapped her arms around his waist. "Is it because of the bad people?" Daniel exchanged a look with Angela. "Yes, baby. There are some people who might want to hurt us." "Like the ones you used to stop when you were a police officer?" "FBI agent," he corrected automatically, then knelt to her level. "And yes, something like that." Lily's small face scrunched in thought. "But you're not scared of bad people. You're brave. You helped that little girl at the park." Angela's words echoed in his mind. Show her that love is stronger than hate. He looked at his daughter's trusting face, then at Angela's determined one, and felt the tug of war in his heart between protection and principle. The map on the counter seemed to mock him now. Running might keep them safe, but what would it teach Lily about facing life's challenges? What would it say about all the sermons on faith he'd been taking her to hear? "We have choices to make," he told Lily carefully. "Sometimes being brave means leaving to stay safe, but sometimes being brave means staying to help others stay safe," Angela finished softly. Daniel stood, still holding Lily's hand, feeling the weight of the moment. The morning sun had risen higher now, streaming through his kitchen window and illuminating the half-packed bag by the stairs. It waited there like a question mark, asking him which path he would choose. The old church basement buzzed with nervous energy as people filed in, filling the metal folding chairs that Pastor Miller had arranged in hasty rows. The fluorescent lights cast a harsh glow over worried faces, and the air felt thick with tension. Daniel sat in the back corner, his shoulders tight, watching as more townspeople squeezed into the cramped space. Angela sat beside him, her hand occasionally brushing his arm in quiet support. Her presence steadied him, even as his instincts screamed at him to grab Lily and run. His daughter was safely at home with Jamal and a trusted neighbor. But his mind kept drifting to them, wondering if they were truly safe. Pastor Miller stood at the front, his usual warm smile replaced by a serious expression. He raised his hands, and the murmuring crowd gradually fell silent. "Friends," he began, his deep voice carrying to every corner, "we face a crisis that threatens not just one family, but the very heart of our community. We've gathered tonight because sometimes God calls us to make difficult choices, to stand up for what's right, even when it's scary." Daniel watched as some people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Others nodded slowly, their faces thoughtful. "Many of you know Daniel Whitaker," Pastor Miller continued, gesturing toward the back. "Some of you have questioned his past. Others have embraced him as a neighbor. But tonight, we need to hear his story, the whole story." Before Daniel could respond, Angela stood up. Her voice trembled slightly but grew stronger with each word. "I have something to say first." She moved to the front, turning to face the crowd. Daniel noticed how some people wouldn't meet her eyes, while others leaned forward, listening intently. "When my son Jamal and I moved here 3 years ago, we faced prejudice. Some of you were kind, but others." She paused, taking a deep breath. "Others made it clear we weren't welcome. But we stayed because I believed in the good here, beneath the fear and mistrust." The room grew very still. Even the usual creaking of chairs ceased. "Now, we have a man among us who spent years fighting against hate. Real, dangerous hate. The kind that destroys communities like ours. And instead of celebrating his courage, some of you want him to leave?" Angela's voice cracked with emotion. "What message does that send to our children? That when things get tough, we run? That we let fear win?" Several people dabbed at their eyes. Mrs. Thompson, who had been one of Daniel's strongest critics, looked down at her hands, her face flushed. "Daniel Whitaker is exactly the kind of neighbor we need," Angela continued. "Someone who stands up for what's right, no matter the cost. Someone who protects the vulnerable. Someone who—" She glanced back at Daniel, her eyes soft. "Someone who teaches our children about real courage." The silence that followed felt heavy with meaning. Pastor Miller stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on Angela's shoulder. "Daniel," he called softly, "would you share your story with us?" Daniel's legs felt like lead as he stood. He'd spent years burying these memories, protecting Lily from this part of his past. But as he walked to the front, he remembered his daughter's question. "Why don't they like us, Daddy?" He cleared his throat, looking out at the sea of familiar faces. People he saw at the grocery store, at school events, at church. "I was an FBI agent for 12 years, he began. "The last 5, I worked undercover, infiltrating hate groups that targeted minorities, planned acts of violence, recruited young people into their twisted ideology." He described the darkness he'd witnessed, but also the light. People who found the strength to leave hate behind, communities that united against bigotry, families that chose love over fear. His voice grew hoarse as he shared how he'd lost his wife in a car accident shortly after leaving the FBI. How he'd chosen this town to give Lily a fresh start. "Now those same people I helped put away are threatening my daughter," he said, his voice breaking. "I won't risk this community's safety. That's why I've decided to—" "No." The voice came from the back. Mr. Jenkins, the hardware store owner, stood up. "You're not going anywhere, son. We'll protect you and Lily like you protected others." Other voices joined in, a chorus of support rising from the crowd. Mrs. Thompson stood, tears streaming down her face. "I was wrong about you, Mr. Whitaker. Please forgive me." Pastor Miller raised his hands again, calling for order. "I propose we take a vote," he announced. "All in favor of standing with the Whitakers, of making this community a fortress of support against those who threaten them. Raise your hand." Daniel watched in amazement as hands shot up across the room. Not everyone raised their hand, but the majority was overwhelming. Angela slipped her hand into his, squeezing gently. Pastor Miller's face broke into a wide smile. "The motion passes," he declared. "Now, let's talk about how we can keep our community safe. All of us, together." As people began discussing practical measures, neighborhood watches, security systems, police coordination, Daniel felt something shift in his chest. The weight he'd carried for so long began to lift, replaced by something he hadn't felt in years. Belonging. The basement of that old church, with its harsh lighting and uncomfortable chairs, had become holy ground, a place where fear turned to courage, where suspicion transformed into trust, where a broken community began to heal. Daniel's fingers trembled slightly as he dialed the familiar number on his cell phone. He stood in Pastor Miller's office, away from the crowd still dispersing from the town meeting. The phone rang 3 times before a gruff voice answered. "Morales here." "It's Whitaker," Daniel said quietly, his free hand gripping the edge of the pastor's desk. "I need your help." There was a pause on the other end. "I've been monitoring the situation. Local paper did quite a number on your cover. They found me, Morales. Left a threat in my mailbox. Almost got to Lily at school." The line crackled with his old colleague's sharp intake of breath. "Give me 24 hours. I'll have a team watching from a distance. No sirens, no uniforms, just eyes and ears." Relief washed over Daniel. "Thank you." "Hey, Whitaker," Morales' voice softened. "You did good work back then. Don't let them make you run." After hanging up, Daniel stepped out of the office to find Angela waiting in the hallway. Her dark eyes were filled with determination. "I've got some ideas," she said, pulling out a notebook covered in her neat handwriting. Together, they walked into the main church hall, where about 30 people had stayed behind, gathered in small clusters and talking in low voices. Pastor Miller stood at the front, writing on a large whiteboard. "Folks," Daniel called out, his voice stronger than he felt, "I've got FBI support coming, but they'll be undercover. We need to organize our own community watch." Angela stepped forward, her notebook open. "I've divided the town into zones. We need volunteers for morning, afternoon, and evening shifts." To Daniel's amazement, hands shot up immediately. Mrs. Henderson, who ran the local bakery, volunteered her early morning hours. "I'm up at 4 anyway for the bread," she said with a warm smile. "I can keep an eye on things." Veterans from the local VFW post offered to coordinate evening patrols. Tom Martinez, who had given Daniel cold shoulders just days ago, now stepped forward with his security company's business card. "I've got cameras we can install. No charge." Pastor Miller's whiteboard quickly filled with names, times, and responsibilities. Someone suggested a phone tree. Another person mentioned setting up a private social media group for real-time updates. Daniel's throat tightened as he watched his neighbors transform into a protective network before his eyes. He thought of all the times he'd kept to himself, thinking isolation meant safety. How wrong he'd been. The next morning, Daniel drove Lily to school, noticing the subtle changes already in place. Mr. Rodriguez, usually busy inside his hardware store, now worked on organizing his outdoor display, his eyes alert. Sarah Chen, the retired nurse, walked her dog past the school 3 times, each pass carefully timed. And there, just at the edge of his vision, Daniel caught the familiar stance of an FBI surveillance team, blending perfectly with the morning coffee crowd at the diner across the street. Morales had come through. "Daddy," Lily said as they pulled up to the school, "is that Mrs. Henderson waving at us?" Daniel smiled, watching the baker arrange her fresh muffin sign while keeping a sharp eye on the school entrance. "Sure is, sweetheart. And look, Angela and Jamal are here early too." Indeed, Angela stood by the school gates with her son, chatting with other parents. But Daniel recognized the way she casually tracked every movement, every unfamiliar face. She'd listened carefully when he taught a quick security awareness session last night. "Everyone's looking out for us," Lily said thoughtfully, her small face serious. "Like a big family." Daniel helped her with her backpack. "That's right, honey. Sometimes being brave means letting others help you." Throughout the day, Daniel received quiet updates. Pastor Miller texted about suspicious cars that turned out to be harmless delivery vehicles. The VFW patrol reported all clear in regular intervals. Tom Martinez's cameras caught nothing concerning. By afternoon, Daniel noticed Lily walking taller, waving to their volunteer guardians with growing confidence. During lunch, she sat with Jamal and some other kids, explaining proudly how her dad had helped people stand up to bad guys. Evening brought a new shift of watchful eyes. Daniel spotted Agent Morales himself, disguised as a jogger, making his third loop around the neighborhood. The agent gave him a barely perceptible nod. At the dinner table, Lily chatted about her day between bites of chicken pot pie that Mrs. Henderson had sent over. "Jenny's mom said we're teaching the whole town about courage," she reported. "And Tommy, who used to tease me, he asked if you could teach his dad some FBI moves." Daniel chuckled, remembering how Tommy's father had enthusiastically volunteered for the evening patrol. "Maybe we'll organize some self-defense classes at the church. Can I learn too?" Daniel studied his daughter's earnest face. A week ago, he would have said no, wanting to preserve her innocence. But watching her absorb the courage of their neighbors, seeing her grow stronger instead of fearful, made him reconsider. "We'll start with the basics," he promised, "like being aware of your surroundings and trusting your instincts." After dinner, they sat on their front porch swing, counting stars and waving to the occasional patrol. Angela and Jamal stopped by during their evening walk, sharing cookies and easy conversation. When it was time for bed, Lily hugged him extra tight. "Daddy," she whispered, "are we still going to move away?" Daniel looked around her room, at the glow-in-the-dark stars on her ceiling and the family photos on her walls. He thought of the community that had transformed from suspicious strangers into vigilant guardians. He remembered Morales's words, "Don't let them make you run." Drawing his daughter close, Daniel kissed her forehead. "No, baby," he whispered back. "We're not running anymore." The moon cast long shadows across the church parking lot as Daniel completed his third perimeter check of the evening. His breath formed small clouds in the chilly night air. Agent Morales had helped set up a network of hidden cameras around the building, their red lights blinking steadily in the darkness. Inside the church basement, a makeshift command center hummed with activity. Regular folks, teachers, shopkeepers, and parents had transformed into an unlikely security team. Mrs. Peterson, who usually spent her evenings knitting, now monitored security feeds on a laptop. Bob from the hardware store maintained radio contact with volunteers patrolling nearby streets. "Movement on Cedar Street," crackled a voice through the radio. Daniel recognized Tom, the high school football coach. Daniel picked up his handset. "What do you see, Tom?" "Two vehicles, dark-colored SUVs, moving slow, no headlights." Daniel's jaw tightened. He'd seen this pattern before, during his FBI days. "Everyone hold positions," he commanded. "Remember the plan." Angela appeared at his side, her face set with determination. "The children are secure at the community center with extra guards," she reported. "Jamal's with them." Daniel nodded, grateful for her strength. "Thank you. Stay inside and—" A crash echoed from the church's east side. Daniel sprinted toward the sound, his feet silent on the grass. Two figures in dark clothing were spray-painting the church wall. Beyond them, more shapes emerged from the shadows. "Now!" Daniel's voice cut through the night. Floodlights blazed to life, bathing the church grounds in brilliant white light. The vandals stumbled backward, shielding their eyes. From strategic positions, townspeople appeared: the baker, the librarian, the retired Marine who ran the coffee shop. Each held a camera, documenting everything. "You're being recorded," Daniel announced, his voice carrying the authority of his FBI years. Every angle, every face. A bottle smashed against the church wall. One of the vandals charged toward Daniel, but years of training took over. In one fluid motion, Daniel redirected the attacker's momentum, sending him sprawling onto the grass. "Your hate has no place here," Pastor Miller's voice boomed from the church steps. He stood tall, surrounded by members of his congregation. More vehicles screeched into the parking lot. Daniel's heart raced until he recognized the familiar crown of blue and red lights. Local police. Right on schedule. Agent Morales had coordinated with them perfectly. The vandals scattered, but they ran straight into the waiting arms of law enforcement. Officers emerged from previously hidden positions, moving with practiced efficiency. Daniel watched as his old training merged seamlessly with small-town courage. One of the arrested men spat in Daniel's direction. "You betrayed your own kind, Whitaker!" Daniel stepped forward, standing in the floodlights where everyone could see him. "No," he said clearly. "I chose what's right. I chose community. I chose love." Angela moved to his side, taking his hand. Around them, neighbors stepped closer, forming a human wall of support. Mrs. Peterson, still clutching her laptop. Bob with his radio. Tom, the football coach. Parents, teachers, shop owners, all standing together. The FBI has been monitoring your group since the threats began, Agent Morales announced, emerging from the shadows. He held up his badge. We have evidence linking you to multiple hate crimes across 3 states. As handcuffs clicked shut and police read rights, Daniel felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He didn't need to hide anymore. His past wasn't a burden to bear alone. It was a strength his community now shared. The church wall still bore the half-finished spray paint, but already people were bringing rags and cleaning supplies. Someone started singing a hymn, and others joined in. The sound swelled in the night air, replacing fear with harmony. Pastor Miller approached Daniel, his eyes bright with unshed tears. Your daughter would be proud of you tonight, son. You showed us all what it means to stand up for what's right. Daniel looked around at the scene. Police processing arrests, neighbors cleaning graffiti, children peeking out from the community center windows where they'd been safely hidden. This was what he'd fought for in the FBI, and what he'd found again in this small town. People choosing light over darkness, love over hate. I spent so long trying to hide who I was, Daniel said, his voice thick with emotion. I thought I was protecting Lily, but maybe the best protection is showing her how to face darkness with courage, and knowing you don't have to face it alone. The police chief approached, notepad in hand. We'll need statements from everyone, but thanks to your preparation and Agent Morales' coordination, we've got solid evidence. These arrests will stick. Daniel nodded, professional instincts kicking in. Their vehicles might have evidence linking them to other crimes. We should... He stopped himself, realizing he was slipping into FBI mode. But the chief just smiled. We'd welcome your expertise, Mr. Whitaker. No need to pretend you're not who you are anymore. Sirens wailed in the distance as more law enforcement arrived. The night air filled with official voices, radios crackling, car doors slamming. Evidence was tagged, photographs taken, statements recorded. Through it all, Daniel stood firmly in the light, surrounded by the community that had chosen to stand with him. The impromptu hymn singing had grown, and now Amazing Grace floated across the parking lot. It seemed to soften the harsh edges of the police lights, wrapping the scene in something holy and healing. Angela squeezed his hand. You okay? Daniel looked at her, then at the church where he'd first learned to pray, at the people who'd become his extended family, at the place where he'd finally stopped running. Yeah, he said. For the first time in a long time, I really am. The autumn breeze rustled through the maple trees as Daniel worked alongside his neighbors, repairing the church fence that had been damaged during the confrontation. His capable hands held the weathered wood steady, while Tom Peterson, who just months ago had avoided eye contact with him at the grocery store, hammered fresh nails into place. Hold it right there, Daniel, Tom said, wiping sweat from his brow. This section's almost done. Daniel nodded, feeling the warmth of the morning sun on his back. The peaceful rhythm of hammering filled the air, punctuated by friendly chatter and occasional laughter. Pastor Miller moved between the working groups, offering cold lemonade and words of encouragement. Angela sat at a nearby picnic table with several other mothers, cutting sandwiches for the volunteers. Her son Jamal was helping Lily distribute paper plates and napkins. The sight of their easy friendship made Daniel's heart swell. You know, Tom said quietly as he lined up another nail, I owe you an apology, Daniel. I let fear cloud my judgment when that article came out. Should have known better than to listen to gossip. Water under the bridge, Daniel replied, adjusting his grip on the fence post. We've all learned something these past few weeks. Mrs. Henderson, the retired school teacher who lived across from the church, approached with a fresh pitcher of lemonade. My goodness, this fence is looking better than new. Daniel, your expertise in construction is quite impressive. Daniel chuckled. Just skills picked up here and there, ma'am. Though I admit, building things is more satisfying than... He trailed off. But the understanding in Mrs. Henderson's eyes told him he didn't need to finish the thought. Daddy! Lily's voice rang out across the churchyard. Can Jamal come over for dinner tonight? His mom said it's okay if you say yes. Daniel caught Angela's eye, and they shared a warm smile. Sure thing, sweetheart, he called back. As long as you two finish helping with cleanup later. The children's whoops of joy drew laughs from the working adults. Pastor Miller approached, resting a hand on Daniel's shoulder. "The Lord works in mysterious ways," he said softly. "Sometimes, what seems like our darkest moment becomes the foundation for something beautiful." Daniel looked around at the scene before him, neighbors working together, children playing, the once broken fence standing strong again. The past weeks had transformed more than just the physical structure of the church grounds. They'd mended the invisible fences between hearts. Later that afternoon, as the work crew began packing up their tools, Carol Wilson, who had been one of the most vocal critics at the town council meeting, approached Daniel with a covered dish. "It's my grandmother's apple cobbler," she said, looking slightly embarrassed. "I remembered you mentioning at the picnic that apple desserts were your favorite." Daniel accepted the dish with genuine appreciation. "Thank you, Carol. That's very thoughtful." "I was wrong about you," she blurted out. "We all were. When everything happened with those people who came to cause trouble, you could have just left. Nobody would have blamed you. But you stayed and protected us all." Daniel shifted uncomfortably at the praise. "This is home now. You protect your home." Sunday morning arrived, with golden sunshine streaming through the stained glass windows of the church. The pews were fuller than usual, with families dressed in their best clothes and an atmosphere of renewed fellowship filling the sanctuary. Lily sat between Daniel and Angela, her patent leather shoes swinging slightly as she listened to Pastor Miller's sermon about community and redemption. When the children were dismissed for Sunday school, she practically bounced down the aisle, eager to join her friends. After the service, the congregation gathered in the social hall for coffee and conversation. Daniel found himself drawn into discussions about everything from the upcoming fall festival to plans for expanding the church's youth program. The stares that had once made him uncomfortable were replaced by warm handshakes and genuine smiles. Mrs. Peterson, the Sunday school teacher, approached with a small group of children trailing behind her. "The children have something they'd like to share," she said, beaming at Lily, who stood at the front of the group. Lily stepped forward, her face glowing with pride. She turned to her classmates and announced in a clear voice, "This is my daddy, the bravest man I know." The other children crowded around, some sharing stories about how their parents had helped during the crisis, others simply wanting to be near the man who had helped keep their town safe. Daniel knelt down to their level, touched by his daughter's words and the children's openness. The wall he'd built around his past was finally down, and in its place stood something stronger, a foundation of trust, understanding, and acceptance. As he looked up, he saw Angela watching him with tender eyes, Jamal by her side. Pastor Miller stood nearby, nodding in quiet approval. The sunlight streaming through the windows seemed to bless the scene, illuminating the faces of neighbors who had become family, of strangers who had become friends. In that moment, Daniel realized that sometimes the bravest thing isn't facing down danger, it's allowing yourself to be truly known, accepted, and loved by your community. The peaceful aftermath of their shared trial had brought healing not just to him and Lily, but to the entire town. The children continued to chatter excitedly around him, their innocent questions and observations drawing gentle laughter from the adults nearby. This was the gift he had always wanted to give Lily, not just safety, but belonging. Not just protection, but community. Not just a house, but a true home. The bright autumn morning spilled its light across the gathered congregation, touching every face with its warm glow. The newly repaired fence stood strong outside, a testament to their unity, while inside, the bonds between neighbors grew stronger with each passing moment. Peace had indeed returned, not just as an absence of conflict, but as a positive presence that filled every corner of their shared life together. Golden sunlight bathed the park in warm honey tones as Daniel pushed the swing where Angela sat, her laughter carrying across the playground like music. The same park that had once exposed his carefully guarded secret now felt different, lighter somehow, as if the shadows of the past had finally lifted. "Higher, Mr. Whitaker," Jamal called from the swing next to his mother, his feet kicked up toward the clouds. Lily stood beside Daniel, taking turns pushing Angela, while Daniel handled Jamal's more adventurous requests. "Not too high," Angela cautioned, though her smile remained bright. "You know how carried away he gets?" Daniel chuckled, remembering his own childhood days on the swings. "Don't worry, I've got him." His hands were steady and sure as he guided the swing, no longer afraid to show his strength and control. The afternoon air carried the sweet scent of late summer flowers and freshly cut grass. Other families dotted the park playing catch, spreading picnic blankets, or simply enjoying the peaceful day. Nobody stared or whispered anymore. The suspicious glances had been replaced by friendly waves and warm greetings. "Remember when we first met here, Daddy?" Lily asked, her small hands pressed against Angela's back as she pushed. "When you helped that little girl?" "I sure do, sweetheart." Daniel's voice was soft with memory. "That feels like a lifetime ago now." Angela slowed her swing until her feet dragged in the wood chips below. "That day changed everything, didn't it?" She looked up at Daniel, her eyes reflecting understanding. "Sometimes the hardest moments lead us exactly where we need to be." Jamal jumped off his swing at its apex, landing with the fearless grace of youth. "Mom, did you see how high I went?" "I saw, baby." Angela shook her head, but her expression was fond. "What did I say about jumping?" "To wait until I'm older," Jamal recited with a grin that suggested he had no intention of waiting that long. Lily ran to join her friend, and soon they were playing an elaborate game of their own invention, something involving hopscotch lines and invisible force fields. Daniel and Angela settled onto a nearby bench, watching their children with matching expressions of contentment. "They're so resilient," Angela said softly, "after everything that happened." "Kids often are." Daniel watched as Lily showed Jamal how to draw a proper hopscotch court with a stick in the dirt. "They helped teach me how to be brave again." "You were always brave, Daniel." Angela's hand found his on the bench between them. "You just needed to remember it." The touch sent warmth through Daniel's chest. He turned his palm up, letting their fingers intertwine naturally. The simple gesture felt right, like pieces of a puzzle finally finding their match. "Do you ever regret staying?" she asked. "When things got dangerous, I mean." Daniel shook his head, watching their children play. "Not for a second. Running would have taught Lily the wrong lesson about facing fear. And besides," he squeezed Angela's hand gently, "we would have missed out on something pretty special." A blush colored Angela's cheeks, but her smile was radiant. "We would have." The afternoon light began to soften toward evening, painting the sky in streaks of pink and gold. Other families gradually packed up their belongings and headed home, but Daniel felt no rush to leave. This moment felt precious, a perfect contrast to that first dramatic day in the park. "Daddy!" Lily called, running over with Jamal close behind. "Can we get ice cream from the truck, please?" The familiar jingle of the ice cream truck drifted through the air. Daniel exchanged a knowing look with Angela. "What do you think? Ice cream before dinner?" he asked. Angela pretended to consider it seriously. "Well, it is a special day. Every day is special now," Jamal said with the simple wisdom of childhood. They walked together to the ice cream truck, the children bouncing with excitement. Daniel bought everyone their favorite flavors: chocolate for Lily, strawberry for Jamal, vanilla for Angela, and a simple ice cream sandwich for himself. They sat at a picnic table, enjoying their treats as the sun began its descent. Lily and Jamal shared bites of each other's ice cream, comparing flavors with the seriousness of food critics. Their easy friendship warmed Daniel's heart. "Brain freeze," Jamal suddenly announced, making everyone laugh. "That's what happens when you eat too fast," Angela said, ruffling his hair. The ice cream truck's music faded as it drove away, leaving behind the peaceful sounds of early evening crickets beginning their chorus, birds calling their last songs of the day, the gentle creak of empty swings in the breeze. Lily finished her ice cream and leaned against Daniel's side, a contented sigh escaping her. The setting sun painted her face in soft gold, reminding him so much of her mother. But the thought didn't bring pain anymore, just gentle gratitude for the love they'd shared, and hope for the love that was growing now. As the sky deepened to purple at its edges, Angela checked her watch. "We should probably head home soon. School tomorrow." Both children groaned in unison, making the adults smile. "Just 5 more minutes?" Lily pleaded. 5 more minutes, Daniel agreed, catching Angela's eye. She nodded, understanding that some moments deserved to be stretched out, savored like the last bite of ice cream on a perfect evening. They walked back to the swings, but this time the children pushed, while Daniel and Angela swayed gently side by side. The metal chains creaked softly, a familiar rhythm that matched the beating of Daniel's heart. "This is nice," Angela said quietly. "It Island." Daniel looked at her profile in the fading light, marveling at how naturally she had become part of their lives. The sun touched the horizon, sending long shadows across the park. Lily appeared at Daniel's side, slipping her small hand into his with complete trust. She looked up at him with eyes full of peace and whispered, "We're safe now, Daddy." Daniel smiled, feeling the truth of her words settle deep in his soul. His gaze met Angela's, and in that moment, he saw all the possibility of tomorrow reflected in her warm eyes. His faith, once shaken, had been restored not just in God, but in love, in community, and in the healing power of truth. The past, with all its shadows and fears, was finally at peace. What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you enjoyed the story of Daniel Whitaker, I handpicked the next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.